We're starting a series on how to use MISys in setting up a process manufacturing company. And for the series of videos that we'll be recording, we will be using a food company as a sample. And we will cover different points of the setup process and how MISys can be used in specific to process manufacturing applications. Today, we're going to cover how to set up items. The options to consider when setting items for a process manufacturing facility is we need to consider whether we're going to be using shop floor control. And in shop floor control, what we have in addition to the items that we use are the operations that are part of the manufacturing process. And it allows us to assign times to these operations as well as to give us the flexibility of seeing when each item is consumed rather than just consuming all of them at one point. You get to say, okay, consume this item during this operation and then next item during the other operation. So you get a little bit more detail possible when you use shop floor control. It is not necessary, but it is available. Serial lot tracking, this usually is a yes for food companies as full traceability is becoming more and more important and in many cases is mandated. Whether we're going to use MPS or MRP, that is dependent on the company's choice. There are other options like buyer's advice report. It doesn't go as into detail as MRP does. And barcoding, whether we're going to be using barcoding or not. That doesn't really affect how we set up items, but when you're setting up your items, these are some of the considerations to think of before going into MISys and starting setting up. The item types that MISys allows us to enter are 5. Assembled items. These are our finished goods that we might sell to customers or our intermediaries. These require bill of materials unless we're purchasing them. And we're going to talk more in detail of each of these items. Raw materials, these are our ingredients used in creating the finished good items. And we have resources. Examples are labor and water. And bulk issue, we might have gloves. You're not going to be saying one glove per liter or one batch, but you might have them issued as bulk. And outside processing, when we're sending our items to third parties outside for value-added activities. These are outside processing. So for our food company, we're going to be using assembled raw material and resource items. For assembled, we're going to have 2 finished goods, our items that we're selling to our customers, and then we're going to have intermediaries that even though they're going to be classified as assembled items, these are going to be items that get further processed to create finished goods. In discrete manufacturing, you would call this subassemblies. And then we have our raw materials. Even though the category is named raw materials, packaging materials fall under that, as well as any ingredient that you put into making your product. And then, as we previously talked about, resources that are water, labor, or any other resources that you might have that you want to include in your bill of manufacturing, which is going to be our next video talking about bill of manufacturing. Now, let's take a look at these items and let's start from the bottom up. I think resources was the last thing that we looked at, and we'll start with resources. Water is a resource, and we would have a stock unit for this, and we would not have this lot tracked. It would be considered as resource, and when this is part of your bill of material water, you don't actually have to assign it lot numbers. Whatever is in the bill of material quantity, it is going to be what is dropped of, and it is not going to have an inventory tracking. It's not going to keep the track of inventory left, because what is the amount of water left after you use 1,000 liters? It's infinite. So that's why we call it a resource rather than a raw material. Labor is also a resource. Now, the difference here that you will see is when it is an item, a resource, I should say, is labor, you need to tick this box here. And sorry, the slide jumped to the next one. But this allows the system to know that this is labor. And when this labor is recorded in your bill of manufacturing or in your shop floor control and recorded against the manufacturing order as labor being used to build an item, it will then go to offset your wage expenses. And then you will be able to see how much of the labor that you're paying for you're actually utilizing. And obviously, you're not always going to be able to have it 100% utilization, but at least you can track and see the difference, the gap, and see if that is reasonable or not. Moving on to raw materials, we have our packaging materials. You can, as in any item, enter your item number, its description. We are assigning item type right here, and then stock unit. Now, it is important to see the stock unit conversions, default units of measure. Stock unit might be each, but you might be purchasing them in boxes from your supplier. So you need to enter that conversion right here in default unit of measure. It's saying that 100 eaches, which is my stock unit, is per box, which is my purchase unit. So when the MRP or buyer's advice determines what your requirements are in eaches, then it'll divide it by 100 and tell you, okay, this is the amount of boxes that you need to order. Some companies might have their boxes lot tracked. Many companies don't. This is a common item for most companies. It is really up to you, but that option is down here in the serial lot tracking section. And on the second tab, the stock tab, we have been looking at the master tab. On the stock tab, you always need to make sure that there is a default location for your materials. At least one location. You can have multiple locations if you store that item in multiple locations. And raw material, again, in this case, probably our ingredients. It's the same setup, nothing different here. It's just probably your stock units will be a little different compared to your packaging items. Most packaging items are purchased in boxes or eaches, whereas most of the raw materials that are ingredients are purchased in kilograms or pounds or whatever measure system you are subscribing to. And the difference again here, the major difference is the serial lot tracking. As you can see, this item is lot tracked, and default sorting is by first in, first out, FIFO. Intermediary, here it becomes important to have decided already whether you're going to be using shop floor control or not, and how you're going to be tracking labor. In the next presentation on bill of materials, we're going to discuss in more detail why a ghost bill of material might be needed. But in this video, we will just quickly say that to be able to track your labor costs using the shop floor control, depending on your batch sizes and your labor costs, you might need to have a conversion BOM, a ghost BOM, to be able to do that more effectively. So if you had one of these ghost BOMs, then first what you would do is have an item that you're building as a batch. So here you can see that the default unit of measure is one batch. You're building one of this batch, and then your conversion BOM will take and say, take this one batch of this item and convert it into 1,000 liters. There are no materials in there. All the materials are going to be in the bill of material for this batch item. It's going to say one batch of item requires 100 kilos of this, 500 liters of this, whatever your ingredients are for that item. So one batch is going to take all those materials, and then your conversion BOM, your ghost BOM, is going to say, okay, one batch of this material makes this many liters, and we'll go through the details of that in the next video. This item, of course, is going to be lot tracked because all your ingredients are going to be entered here. And to have the full traceability, you need to have this item lot tracked. Of course, this is if you have decided initially that you're going to be serial and lot tracking your items and finished goods. And here is the item that we would create if we were going to use the conversion BOM. Notice that the previous one, intermediary 1001-B, the B standing for batch, was stock unit was batch, and in intermediary 1001, our mixture possibly, the stock unit is pounds or liters or kilograms. And on again the stock tab, you see that there is definitely a location, at least one location determined, and more importantly, there is a lot size. In this case, it's 240 pounds. The pounds are referring to the previous slide where we define the stock unit of measure as pounds. So whatever we have decided here applies to all of these set amounts that we set here. So in this intermediary 1001, our mixture 01, our lot size is 240. So every time we take one batch of intermediary 1001-B and convert it into intermediary 1001, it's going to make 240 pounds of the same. And finally, our finished good. Our intermediaries were our sub-assemblies in a sense, and they still go under the item type assembled, but there is a difference because we don't actually sell them, whereas our finished goods is what we sell to our customers. And again, similar to all the other items that we were setting, it is important to set a stock unit. We might be, let's say in finished good 1001, it's a protein bar, a chocolate chip protein bar. We're not going to sell them one by one. So our stock unit is boxes. And if there is a conversion, it's 1-to-1, one box for one box. And it's always lot tracked if we have decided to use lot tracking for our company. And we have selected to use first in, first out system. So this is a very quick rundown of how to set up items. In the next video, we're going to discuss our bill of materials and looking at the options of setting that with shop floor control or without shop floor control.